So, hey Scorpio, my name is Chris, and this is your beautiful reading for whenever you freaking find it in 2026. Yes, kind of all of my readings are yearly readings now, because 2026 is just such a freaking year. 10 cards. I'm not doing the Carty Cross, that's too Carty Crossy for me. That's the 10 of Pentacles and the Knight of Cups. So you're really going for it. I talked about you following your your passion, basically, not, following your passion. Everybody's going to tell you that this is not so much about fire energy, but about cups energy. Taking what you love to do to the next level. That's not the Page of Cups where you kind of get in touch with that what you love to do. This is the Knight of Cups where you kind of go to the next level and really show up for it on a daily freaking basis. And the Knight, right? So we're speeding up. We're not just walking along, right? Thinking about taking that cup and going along with that little cup. No, we're on a horse, right? We're going into it, right? And we're going for it. 10 of Pentacles, that's what's coming out of it. That's what you're manifesting. Immersing yourself in your own creation. Well, it's abundance and prosperity, right? That's the 10 of Pentacles. There's money in this, right? There is manifestation and, of course, pentacles, coins. That's money. That's beautiful. But there's a deeper meaning to it. So you're kind of creating the world that you want for yourself. And you might immerse yourself in it. People might not even recognize what you're doing and realize what you're doing, but they actually might overlook you, right? But while you're still the creator of something that is meaningful to you, on the next level, not the page, but the Knight of Cups now. So there's success. If you follow what you love to do, what is meaningful to you, where your heart is connected to, there's success in that, right? And I've been there. I have had shitty 9-to-5 jobs, right? Actually, I worked a lot, right? It's not often enough. It's not just 9-to-5. It's more like 9-to-6 or 7 sometimes, right? And maybe even on the weekends and stuff like that. There's the Page of Cups, right? You took the cup. Page of Cups wanted to show up. So what I'm trying to tell you is follow what you love to do is such a nice, beautiful advice, and everybody can give you that. But how do you get there if you have a 9-to-5 job, if you have student debt to pay off, like me a few years ago? I couldn't just, I had totally enough cups to think about to really go for them, but, I had to pay my shit. So, but you know what I'm telling you now is that the system is not designed for you to make it. The system is designed for you to die trying to make it. So if you are running after the mighty dollar all the freaking time, whether it's to pay off your student debt, which is a good idea. If you can do that, that frees you a great deal, right? But, if you're running for money and, let's just have a second car, we need to afford child care and daycare and this and that, right? Whatever brings you into your center, whatever cuts down this hamster wheel energy, we're just running and running faster and faster just to make ends meet, that is on purpose. That keeps you busy, that keeps you in guilt, fear, shame, and frustration, and sorrow, and scarcity. So you're not taking the freaking cup, that which you love to do, and go for it. Because if you do that, if you do what you love, there's less control, and you actually might come up with something pretty important and pretty decent and pretty, even if it's just, if you're just meditating every freaking day because that's what you love to do and that is healing to you, which I totally recommend, there's less control, If you're not chronically ill, there's less profit for the pharma industry. If you're not stressed out, you know, if you're not having a car, if you're not running all the freaking time, if you're not trying to think, oh, you have to buy this and that to run in this hamster wheel, right? The hamster wheels get bigger and bigger, and you think you're making much money or more money in the bigger wheel, but you have bigger expenses, and, you know, and you're running faster, and the wheel gets bigger and bigger and more complex. And that's by design. So you have to eventually make the decision to calm down, slow the fuck down, and actually feel within yourself, what do you love to do? And then give that loving attention, and something will manifest out of that. That's the 10 of Pentacles, right? I know it's hard, but it's fairly simple what to do, but it's not exactly easy, but it is doable. So you have to cut the BS wherever you can in your life. Is that necessary? Does that serve me? Why am I doing that? Do I really need the big car? Do I need the big car payments? Do I need this subscription and that subscription, right? So you know, how much time do you work for that? And, you know, you could cut a few things off that you don't need. Subscriptions, maybe you get a smaller car, maybe you don't need a car at all. If you're in a bigger city, somewhere in Europe, you can come by easily with public transport, right? So it's a different story if you're in somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the United States, where the distances are just huge. Completely different story. But maybe it's a subscription, maybe it's this and that. And when you sit there in meditation, when you do something that you love to do, you're healing yourself, you're transforming your consciousness, you're expressing your highest potential, and you're creating something of value. You cannot create anything but value if you do what you love. Everything that is done with love, out of love, will create something functional, beautiful, healing, meaning, and ultimately divine. And there are people who don't want you to do that. King of Cups, Queen of Wands, and the Hierophant. Act according to that which you love. You have to make it a daily habit, not just on the freaking weekend. And there is passion in that too. So, you know, they can literally harvest your energy, your fire energy, right? Mainly through frustration and anger and ultimately hatred. That's the distraction, right? If you can direct the fire energy, the fire aspect of a person into anger and hatred. You know, nobody can live in hatred. So hatred needs to go somewhere. If it's inside you, it needs to go somewhere. Usually people project it onto an outside enemy. That's how you take or capture the fire energy of people, cultivate it through anger and hatred, and direct it out through projection onto external forms. Oh, it's these people, or it's that people, it's that religion, it's that nationality, right? Blah, blah, blah. That's all a diversion, that's all a distraction. Focus your energy on what you want to create. Fire energy, passion, sexuality. Be wise about these things and act accordingly. Fuel it, focus it, direct it into that which you love. Not fighting the old system so much as you're creating the new system. But in order to create a new system, a new life, a new project in your life, you know, whatever you want to achieve, you have to realize the situation that you're in and make a conscious decision to change that, you know. And if you're not knowing, Plato's allegory of the cave, for example, Maybe you've heard about that. If you're not knowing that you're in that cave, you don't know that there's something else for you. Emperor and the Five of Swords. Try not to force it onto anybody. Do not try to convince people to do what they're not ready for. Just make suggestions, basically. So we're not going back into the fight. We're not telling people what to do. The fight is over. That Emperor approach is over, and you're the Hierophant. You know, you're a teacher. But teaching doesn't mean that you tell people what to do. That's what the Emperor would do. And that always leads to, is kind of destined to be interwoven with conflict, that's for sure. But you don't want that. We don't want that because that is connected to conflict, you know? So don't... If your boss, for example, is a narcissist, right? And the first attempt should be to talk to the person directly, you know, really, I have a problem with this and that, and you said this and that, and I think that's wrong because this and that. And then you see how this person reacts, right? But if this person and the entire power structure of whatever, that workplace, that family, that friendship, that institution, that this and that, does not support problem solving at all, but it's just basically enforcing a power structure, and whether you like it or not, we don't care. Shut up and go back to work. Then it's the wrong place, and you have to draw your consequences. You're not going into a fight, right? You're not going into a fight to change that workplace or that family or that institution. No, you're building a new system. You're not, you know, you just quit, you get another job, you do this, you do that. Maybe you, if it's someone in your family, narcissistic, toxic, antagonistic person, don't fight windmills. That is a waste of time and energy. And ultimately, if you engage, if you constantly explain yourself, personalize stuff, don't do that, right? You're wasting your energy, and it's not going to suit you well. So focus on that, what you want to create. Page of Cups, Knight of Cups. Knight of Cups. And the King of Cups is here as well. So tame your fire. If you're angry, anger can be a catalyst for change. There's the Two of Cups. How many cards do we got? 3, 6, 8, 9. Fortune after difficulty, that's what we're looking for. Fortune after freaking difficulty, that's the 10 of Cups, right? A lot of Cups energy, Page of Cups, Knight of Cups, King of Cups, there's the 10 of Cups as well. You not being the freaking Emperor, you're not going to war, you're not, you know, calling people out, but you are talking about how things work. And not so much focused on to replace that which is dysfunctional, but to build on that which is functional, which is serving your purpose, which is bringing you joy and happiness on a freaking daily basis. But you have to make room for that. And if you try to fight your boss, you know, there's no... You might eventually replace your boss and become just as narcissistic and bossy as that old person if you in that energy, right? But that's not where what we want, not on this channel, right? This is an empathic channel. We're not going for power. We're going for happiness and the highest expression of our inner intrinsic core. And that is mainly achieved not by fighting the old, but by building the new. Fortune after difficulty, and you know, that's the bottom of the deck. That's the underneath, right? That's your difficulty. That's the fortune after difficulty, and that's your difficulty. So there's a devil outside, right? There's antagonistic people, there are narcissistic people, there are toxic people, very, very shady, horrible stuff, right? institutions, people, family members, toxic friendships, you name it. So there's a devil in the outside, and then there's a devil in the inside. And the devil in the inside takes the bait of the devil of the outside. The antagonistic frequency, right? Let's just call it that. Wants you to fight, wants you to be angry, wants you to engage in conflict. Back into it. You won that. That's the Five of Swords. It was a very dirty fight, you know, but there is victory here. But don't be the emperor now. Be the wise teacher who says, okay, this is how it works, and you have to make a choice. And that's, you know, what this reading is all about. Not the emperor, but the Hierophant. Do not fight the narcissist. Do not take the bait. The narcissist wants you to fight. He wants you in shame, guilt, fear, or anger, hatred, frustration. Ultimately hatred. That's the dark side. Watch Star Trek again. Come on. Right? Everything that Yoda said. Pretty reasonable. So if you fight with the same means that the narcissist, if they lie and you lie as a result, then you're basically adopting the functionality, the behavior of that toxic person. And guess what? Then there are two of you, even if you fight each other. But ultimately, inside, if you do the same things, if you engage in the same behavior, the toxic person might still fight you. But if you become just as toxic as the other person, you lose. You have already lost, right? And the darkness has won another soldier. Doesn't care if they fight each other. There's another one in hatred, in externalization, not following her inner light, not following love, not following the divine, not following inspiration and healing and creation, joyful, loving creation. And that's what we want to do. And that's where your Ten of Cups are. Fortune of the freaking difficulty. Following your cups, there's the Ace of Pentacles, but we already got the Ten of Pentacles, so there's a lot of potential in that. Practically speaking, if you do meditation and breathwork every day, right? 10 seconds in, 20 seconds out, 7 seconds in, 14 seconds out, 1 in, 2 out, releasing negativity, and then you do the same amount in meditation. If it's just 5 minutes each, you already, if you do that every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, it's going to have a huge transformative effect on your life. If you're bitching on the other side for 10 minutes on some news outlet comment section, or you know you're in that, that's not how we win, right? Devil wants you to fight. You make a conscious decision to go into that frequency. And that means to cultivate inner peace, daily frequent practice, meditation, breathwork, being true to yourself. And if you're still enough to feel your own feelings, for example, true meditation, then you just know, okay, that's not the right place for me. Right? If you're with the wrong people at work, if you're, this or that, family members, is a little bit difficulty or more difficulty. You can't just change your family like you change your job, but you get the idea. You have to, in order to do that wonderful stuff with the page and the king, page and knight and king of cups and the 10 of cups, there's the ace of pentacles, 10 of pentacles, the hierophant, that's beautiful. But in order to do that, you have to end conflicts or opt out of conflicts. You're not convincing the toxic boss that you're right. You have to convince yourself or understand that you're not ever going to change toxic people, but you can only change yourself. And if that person stays, if management or whatever human resources, what a horrible word. But, you know, other people don't see it, then don't go into warrior mode to fight this, but just change jobs or carve out space, cut down. You can silently quit, you know, and just gray rock everybody, which is not, it's a temporary solution because it's not really, but you know, you can, you know, even if it's a toxic family member and you can't avoid the person at Christmas dinner or Hanukkah dinner or I don't know, Kwanzaa dinner or whatever. So you can still minimize the exposure and minimize engagement. Don't engage, don't explain yourself, don't defend yourself, and don't personalize what they're doing. You got bigger fish to fry, and the biggest fish to fry is your own happiness and your inner peace. And that guy wants to transport all the meanness in the outside world into your heart and poison your heart. So you behave just as shady as the outside toxic people. And this is not what we're doing. Two of Pentacles. The Hermit. Hermit is kind of the bridge. You have to be able to stand alone. This fear of being alone, this fear of not having tons of people and everybody's agreeing with you and everybody's tapping your shoulder, you know, if you cannot stand on your own, even if, you know, you have to speak your truth, even if your voice is shaking. And that means to be able to stand alone, not forever, right? But eventually, there must be consequences to your values. You have to show up for them in your life. There's the Five of Swords, clarifying the Five of Swords and the Emperor. Yeah. And the devil always wants you to rush, right? The devil always wants to bring you into high frequency states of consciousness where you feel rushed, where you feel totally or excited or angry or fire energy, you know, and in this rush, in this fast frequency, you're kind of pushed into making decisions. And if you're making a decision out of guilt, fear, shame in the moment, out of hatred or rage or anger or frustration, in the moment, very emotionally charged, angry, right? And then you make a decision, you're most likely making the wrong decision that is not benefiting you, but that in itself is what this energy wants you to do. So you have to slow the fuck down. Cut down the working hours a little bit. Cut down the BS. Cut down the subscriptions. Cut down all the BS that does not serve your highest purpose. Come back to yourself in stillness, in inner peace. If you don't have 10 minutes for meditation and breathwork every day, you have to change something in your life. And if you use those 10 minutes to bitch about stuff that you cannot change on social media or arguing with other people, that's the old system. That's that energy. We're not freaking doing that. Learn to stand ambiguity, by the way. So who is right, who is wrong, who is the narcissist? You know, sometimes it's not so clear cut, but if something feels wrong, there's a lot of Cups energy here. Trust your feelings, trust your gut feelings, trust your emotions, not as a starting point to fight or to aggressively attack someone or call someone out and you did then. Just realize, oh, that doesn't feel good. So what can I change to change that? You know, what can I change in the outer circumstances? Maybe cut down on subscriptions, on working hours. Maybe I can work on a different time shift. Maybe I can, you know, change something to avoid that if it's not solvable. Okay. Never tolerate intolerance. That's Karl Popper. And I'm not telling you to be passive, right? Just because you're not calling people out, just because you're not going into fights with them, that doesn't mean that you just shrug your shoulders and be the doormat and allow everything shady to happen. You're drawing your consequences, but you're not making a fuss about it. You're not fighting with the narcissist or the toxic person. You're not engaging in their toxicity because that's what they want. They want you to fight. They love the drama that's giving them energy, right? They love your engagement and your drama. They want you to engage. They don't necessarily, it's not about winning the fight. It's keeping the fight going on. That's the game that they're playing. So if you understand that, just because you're not doing it, just because you're not taking the bait of the narcissist and engaging in conflict, that doesn't mean that you're not speaking your truth, even if your voice is shaking. That doesn't mean that you're not speaking out against injustices or things that go wrong. But don't make it, you have to maintain your dignity, your inner calm, your inner peace when you do that. And never forget that pushing against something is always less powerful than creating something new, which is not easy to navigate in the real life, but that's just how it freaking is. Plato, right? The measure of a man is what he does with power. If you are the emperor, right, then be a good emperor. Take responsibility. But again, not in this fighting the old, but more in the building the new. If you have to fight the old because you're in a war, for example, try to change your life so that you're no longer in that war or in that conflict. Whatever that means. Disengaging from it doesn't mean that you allow it to happen. It just means that you're putting yourself out and focusing your energy back onto that, what you want to create. Healing, expression of your highest potential. Joyful, loving creation. That's how this works, right? Archangel Michael, you're protected if you're always protected by the divine. If you are creating in its spirit, so to speak, if you're in creation, loving, joyful creation, and you're always supported. And no matter what you do, if you do it motivated by hatred and destruction, then you're always on that side, even if you think you're absolutely right. But if you do horrible stuff because you're absolutely right, form and function are two very, very different things. It's not about the form, it's about what you do, function. And the guidance to it is your inner emotions. If you're in hatred, anger, all the freaking time on your holy war, then that war might not be so holy. If you, on the other side, feel, just carried by Archangel Michael, or, I don't know, the Buddha, the Brahman conscious, you name it, whatever you want, Allah, this and that, I don't care what you name it. The form doesn't matter. The feeling, the inspiration, the support that you get while you're doing it, that uplifting frequency, that is the indicator, and that you can feel with your heart. And that's pretty much all I got, my friends. That was an interesting reading. More interesting than I expected, but it's a very good reading. Let's not forget, Ten of Pentacles, Page and Knight and King of Cups and the Ten of Cups. And there's Nightingale spirit. We live in a little shady time, but there is love all around. And the more you connect with your inner light, the more all the others who do the same connect and support you. There's love all around, even if you cannot necessarily see it all the freaking time. Trust in that, believe in that, do what you love, do not fight the old, build the new. Now, goodbye, my friend. That's all I got. Share, like, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think about it. And there's the yearly reading, there's the summer reading, check that out. If you want the full picture, sun, moon, and rising, and that's all I got. Namo Buddhaya.